people that you come into contact with. And if you have a family, for sure you will damage your family. It's a virus that will go on generation after generation. I see trauma that goes from father to son, from mother to daughter, and then from daughter to daughter. It's a virus in terms of behavior, thinking, and an approach to living. So this is why, number 4, recognizing and understanding other people's emotions. And one of the things I always say, people who go through difficulties in their life, there is a wisdom to that, I believe, because it enables them to then help others, have empathy for others, feel what other people are feeling, and you pick up those signals, and you're able to help and enable another person. And so this is really critical that, the experiences that we have, they don't destroy us, they actually make us. And I remember so many of the self-help groups that I've worked with, individuals that I've supported over the years, whatever their issues are, whether it's obsessive compulsive disorder, whether it's addictive behavior, whether it's body image issues, whether it's eating disorder. And then those insane individuals, once they've become empowered and overcome their problems, have then gone on to help others. And because they are assets, they become so attuned. And this is where we start to create then a society where we help each other to grow and where we enrich each other. And finally, managing relationships, managing the emotions. Let me tell you, relationships are hard, okay? I've been married over 20 years, and it's hard work, okay? And you know what? You've got to put the work in. Absolutely, you've got to put the work in. You will never be tested more than in relationships, because the person who is your partner knows more about you than anyone else. It's the most intimate relationship you have. It's also the most challenging relationship you have. And it will be exposed who you really are. Many cases that many individuals will go through their life able to cover up their problems, able to deny that they have a problem, but in a relationship it certainly doesn't come out. And a lot of the relationship counseling that I do, the biggest issue is where one partner is just crying out for help, that the other partner gets that help, so that the relationship can be managed. They don't want to break up, but one person has a problem. We had a case in the UK, very high-profile case in the UK. I don't think you probably heard about it earlier this year. An individual called Gary Speed, who was a famous footballer in the UK. He played for many of the top Premiership teams in the UK. He won lots of titles. He was also the coach of the Welsh national team. He was also a celebrity on television, reporting on the football and talking about football and issues like that. One interesting, when you see Gary Speed, what's interesting, you see him that, a very handsome man, a very wealthy man, a beautiful family, children, everything. And it was bizarre because I saw him on television on the Saturday night on the football show, and he was talking about the football and the matches that had been won. He went home that night from the studio, went into his garage, tied a rope around his neck, and hanged himself. His wife found him in the morning. And the news then broke, and really the society was in shock. How could this man, who had everything going for him, in the outward sense, everything, fame, money, wealth, beautiful family, looks, celebrity, everything, yet inside he's in turmoil. And this is an interesting thing about men who commit suicide. Okay, there's a greater proportion of men who commit suicide compared to women. Women tend to have higher levels of self-harm. But also the other thing, and this is universal, this is global, the World Health Organization recognized as well, the most at-risk group are generally young men, 18 to 35, most high-risk group as well. And what they generally find is that men also are more successful in committing suicide on the first occasion compared to females who will take several. So that doesn't open towards a sexist joke now, please. Okay? It's just that, it seems that for women it's much more of a cry for help, but men are much more effective. They generally commit suicide on the first occasion. And for many of the men, there is no history of engaging any agency, whether it's their doctor, a counselor, psychologist, even a friend. So everyone is in the dark No one even knows about whether this person has an emotional problem or not until the tragic event actually occurs. After that event, everyone's asking questions. Well, how could this have happened? And then it slowly starts to unravel that, this is an individual who has been quietly suffering from depression for most of his life. Even though he was a high-performing footballer, the pressure that was on that individual to perform every day, and he could not say to someone, I can't do it. I read another similar story of another individual who all his life, even though he was so successful, he achieved the highest level in his career as a sports person, all the way, he says, that his self-esteem was not even there. He felt that he was lying to himself. He felt, eventually I will be exposed. Imagine doing that, living your whole life, your adult life, thinking that someone eventually will find out I am a fake. I am someone who is not even worthy of this position. And that person was an alcoholic. And he got his, he got his mind away from the situation, he blew his mind by alcohol. But with Gary Speed, it's the same thing that underlined that whole thing, which was that, his whole life, he never had the intelligence to actually just say to someone, this is how I feel. Now also, when he died tragically, there's enormous damage that's left behind. And this is the interesting thing. No one is, the action is so selfish, you could say. Because it destroys not just his life, obviously, but it destroys the life of everyone else attached with him. It destroys so many people's lives. From his children to his wife who came and had to then cut him down. And the work that he did in prisons, one of the things that kind of brought this reality home to me in prisons. In the UK prisons, I'm sure it's the same here, that all prison officers, they carry a particular instrument. And I asked the prison officer, what's that instrument that you are carrying? He says, it's called a fish knife. It's the knife that fishermen use. I'm sure they probably use it here as well, to cut nets. And then I knew why they had this knife. Every single one of them carries it. He said, this is a knife that as soon as we come into a cell and we see someone hanging, then immediately we have one person has to press the alarm bell, hold that person up, while someone else comes with that knife and cuts the person down. You've got seconds to do it. But usually it's too late. So that's kind of, it brings it home to you that the reality in prison, again, young offenders are also a high-risk group in terms of suicide. But can you see the point I'm trying to make is that, this is how, emotional intelligence to me is different from cognitive intelligence. In that emotional intelligence is fundamentally a life and death issue. Does that make sense to everyone? I'm not being too dramatic here, but it is a life and death issue. It's about your real long-term well-being throughout the whole of your life. And I assume many of you will go on to be in relationships, married, and have children. It's also about your children's welfare and your emotional well-being, so you don't get the virus into them. It's also about societal well-being, so that you cannot, you behave and interact with each other much more positively, and not in terms of conflict or in terms of tension, but also that you are able to create that well-being in society and support others and have empathy for others as well. So emotional intelligence, that's why it's such a critically important thing. The program that I work with on emotional intelligence is really something I deliver over a whole year. So, I'm just giving you a snapshot of some of those issues today. The PowerPoint is available to you. It's got over, I think, 200 slides. I'm not going to do them today, okay? I only got through the second one. So obviously, it's going to take a long time, but it's your resource. I thought I'd put it as a resource of information for you around these particular issues. I'm going to stop for about 3 minutes. Are there any questions on what I've said so far? Any questions or any comments at all from anyone? Okay, let me put it another way. Useful or not useful? Be honest. Useful or not? Useful? Yes? Okay, good, thank you. Okay. Any questions? You learn much more from questions and answers than me talking. I think you've realized now I can talk for many days, okay? But, you know, I'd rather have interaction.
Can I see emotional regulation as the same concept with EQ?
Sorry, I didn't catch the first part of the question.
Emotional regulation.
Okay.
Is this the same thing as the emotional intelligence?
No, I think emotional regulation is a part of emotional intelligence. Because emotional regulation is about just you monitoring your own emotions, keeping a record of them, checking out how your emotions change. For example, one of the things you can do is keep a journal. So that what that means is that looking at your different emotions through a week, your happiness, your sadness, your anger, your excitement, your aggression, you know, and regulating them and scoring them. Let's say some people say score them 1 to 5, and then relate that to what is the, for example, I found on Tuesday my anger was 5 on the high scale. Then what was the experience or what were the events that day that caused that to happen? And then when I also have anger, and I also, okay, on that same day my happiness was 1. Okay, and if you put another score, which is that, okay, what about my relationship? My relationship that day was 0. Okay, so therefore you can see that maybe my relationship issue caused me to be unhappy, caused me to be more aggressive. Can you see the point there around regulation and monitoring of your emotions? If you monitor it in that kind of a way, systematically, it enables you to see patterns in your own behavior. And that's just a part of what we call number 2, which is knowing your emotions, 1 and 2, knowing your emotions and managing your emotions. The other aspects of emotional intelligence, like I said, it's more broader, is, you know, like I said, reading other people's emotions and being able to support other and nurture positive emotions in other people as well. So it's a bit more broader, it's a part of emotion.
Thank you.
One more question we'll have? Anyone? Gentleman here.
Okay, I wanted to ask that how important is trust? Because if someone does not discuss anything with anyone, it means he does not trust anyone. So how can he develop trust on anyone?
Good, very good question. Trust is a very, very important issue. There's 2 aspects of trust, of course. The first aspect of trust, and of course culturally I'm sure each society has different levels of trust. The first aspect of trust is you've got to trust yourself. Does that make sense? Before you can trust other people, you've got to trust yourself. In many ways, this is what it's about. Again, number 1, knowing yourself, knowing your own emotions. If I know my own emotions, for example, I know that I will get angry when my happiness goes down because of my relationship issues are bad. Then I need to trust myself that I'm going to get angry. So then I need to trust someone else to help me in that situation. See the point? Yeah. So trust is starts with you. Trust personally with yourself. If you can't trust yourself, then I think you find it difficult to trust others. Part of that trust is also, you know, the sense that you feel that by talking about an issue, I will appear weak and deficient. And so therefore you don't want to be exposed in front of another person. So this is also part of the challenge in relation to trust. Now, one of the other things we want to talk is that, like I said, we have a responsibility to other people on campus and in society, our families and our friends. We have a responsibility to them as well. If I see another individual who is in distress, who is in emotional problems, then of course I need to engage that individual. It's not easy. It's not very easy. Imagine you think you're going to go up to someone, you can see that they're behaving abnormally. I had this situation a while ago where an individual, his behavior, again, he has a history of mental health problems, and his behavior started becoming very erratic, very unusual, very challenging, attention-seeking type of behavior, and he was really upsetting another person by making, you know, again, provocative sexual remarks to that individual. Now, this person needs help, but the person felt, what do I do? What do I do? The person, you know, and the remarks were of a homosexual nature, so he was coming on to another man. So, you know, and I know underlying this issue is obviously an emotional problem that individual has. So it's difficult to then try to get that person to open up to you. It's difficult to do that. See, with trust, you have to have what I call credibility. And you've got to have the skills to, you know, enable a person to open up. Not everyone can do this. You know, sometimes you can create a worse situation. You know, for example, by being judgmental or being, you know, you see someone, for example, they're being provocative, then you are, rather than ask them why, can you tell me what's going on? a person will say, don't do that, that's bad, which will make that person do it even